Oh hey, I didn't see you there. So, if you haven't seen the other two videos, be sure to check those out. To summarize, I've been only using the horse to deal damage, and so far, I beat the entirety of the main game by doing just that. My current goal? To beat the post-game, being New Lumos. So, to start, I'm going to have to grab something from the Galados Isle. This area is actually a fair jump in difficulty, because some of these normal enemies actually kinda posed more of a problem than the Darkest Lord did. Thanks to Kier.exe, I still had no trouble just running through the waves of enemies, while I waited for Lawnmower to actually hit them. After a long trek, I got to the gated area that connects back to the Realm of the Fae. In here, the enemies were actually way harder, and I mean way harder. There were enemies that could two-shot me, others with insane amounts of HP, and a literal dragon. On top of all of that though, was one enemy which really took the cake, the purple Woof-o'-the-Wisp. Yeah, you know that one boss that gave me so much trouble last time? Now there's two of them. They have more attack than before, with a band of enemies coming before and after them. At this point, my hand was forced, so I did something that you might not all like, but I knew that I would have to resort to it later anyways. I mean that I had to grab a guest me from the Traveler's Hub to help me out. I grabbed a cleric, Xiao Ping, and look, I get what you might think of that. I'm supposed to only deal damage with the horse, and I can't stop her from using normal attacks. Counterpoint, I'll be fighting the Dark Sun, a monster stronger than the devil, so who cares? Continuing on, I got past the pups, fought some enemies that taught me the meaning of fear, and unlocked the elf job. For those of you who don't know, this job is just about the best support that you could ask for, in any game really. We get Forest Aegis, which puts up a barrier that cuts down on damage for the rest of the battle, Healing Melody, which heals more than Kier.exe did, and Forest's Blessing, which restores MP. On top of all of that, our Horse Whispering is just like the Scientists, so we are good in the damage department. First things first, I used the Scientist to test my luck against the first district boss in New Lumos. This was not too bad, as I could keep up with the damage and was able to beat it fairly quickly. But keep in mind, this is what would only be the first boss in the Tower of Dread, and I used Horse Whispering too. After that, I went to check if the Scientist job could beat the Dark Sun too, and I'm sure the results are not too surprising. I lost pretty quick, with it doing over 100 damage a hit. This confirmed my belief that I would need the elf and its barrier. After a long training montage, I had gotten to max level, looted a ton of treasure to get all the way up to legendary gear, the best in the game, and maxed out my food stats. I used the OP food mod for that last part, but cut me some slack. I spent hours to get the EXP from enemies and the roulette wheel, and I am sick of maxing food stats after jobless. So anyways, I went back to New Lumos' 8th district and wanted to see if it would even be possible to do this. Facing off against the Dark Sun yet again, my barrier is already showing to be quite effective, having the damage that it did. I got some pretty good RNG with Lawnmower, dealing a fair bit of damage to the Dark Sun, while maintaining my health between Healing Melody and Xiao Ping's Giga Cure. Maintaining my MP was something I had to do now though, since unlike with Kier.exe, I had to use two separate skills, and they were more costly in terms of MP. I had pretty much gotten health and MP managing down, where I could heal twice before my MP got too low to restore back to max, which is useful because Horse Whispering required me to be at max. I'm going to let you all know, it has been some time since I've done the Tower of Dread. I am not a completionist. I have only ever did it once on the 3DS. So, when I got the Dark Sun down to half health, I was lured into a false sense of security. I expected it to go into its second phase once it reached half health, and when it didn't, I thought that meant I was able to be free of worry. How wrong I was! It goes into the second phase at a quarter of its health, and this was a bit of an issue for sure. Just like the Darkest Lord, it would use its move that reduced me to 1 health, its meteor attack, and repeat it over and over again. I was panicked. You do not understand. I didn't know how much health I was supposed to restore myself to after getting knocked down to 1 HP. I had already used some of my sprinkles since I wasn't being careful, and I didn't know the triggers for Xiaoping or the Dark Sun's move order. I had to ditch my barrier and put up shield sprinkles once I ran out of HP sprinkles, because the boss attacks right after setting me to 1 HP. And yeah, that's the thing about barriers. They are incompatible with shields. Against all odds though, Lawnmower gave me some good opportunities to attack, and I dumped all of my MP sprinkles, letting the arrows fly, and miraculously, beating the Dark Sun. But hey, now we have to do it again, in a boss rush with 7 other intense battles. So yeah, the Tower of Dread unlocked after this, and honestly, most of the enemies were super light work. Since I could heal and restore MP, and I wanted to save all my resources for the top floor, I mostly just sat there using Healing Melody and Forest Blessing. I couldn't use Horse Whispering or anything, because then I'd have to use some sprinkles to have enough MP for Forest Blessing again. Or I could get lucky and have Lawnmower use Cheek Rub, but I wasn't going to take that chance. The tower was actually fairly easy for the most part, although I do have a perfect build after all. One part was fairly challenging, the Dark King and Queen, because of one large factor: the Nightmare skill. Nightmare was the absolute worst part of this entire tower, because even the King of Hounds could kill me with bad Nightmare RNG. I also couldn't rely on Xiaoping to heal me, because she simply just didn't want to while I was afflicted with the status, and Calm would not work either. Lawnmower, however, was a lifesaver, as he could wake me up with Neigh. The odds for this to happen weren't too low, but they were still low enough that it wouldn't go off many times, and I would end up taking about 50 damage from Nightmare. But I could get through it by focusing on one of the two, singling out the other, and defeating the last one, thus leading me on to the Dark Sage. This was, of course, the second toughest boss in the tower. It proved just how strong it was to me, by the way, by completely annihilating me. You see, before I could heal or put up a barrier, Lawnmower decided to actually give me a chance to attack. This horse really has it out for me, I swear. So I took the opportunity, underestimating the Dark Sage's abilities since I didn't really remember all that it did. Unfortunately for me, what it did was a lot of damage. This thing just has the Darkest Lord's right hand's moveset, but get this. Its lock-on attack, even with my barrier up, does 120 damage. So, that really sucked. And it didn't just kill me with that. No. It hit me with a small attack after I used Lawnmower, then locked on. And I went to set up my barrier after this, with 160 health remaining. I got hit with the lock-on attack, taking a ton of damage, but then it used its second strongest attack to make sure that I was finished off. So yeah, rule 1 of that boss, never trust Lawnmower, and always set up my barrier first. So I went back and fought all the bosses again, taking me like another half an hour, and I challenged the Dark Sage again. This time, I played it safe and defensively, making sure to stay at a good amount of health. After a long-fought battle, I beat it. The best part of all of this was that I still had my full stock of sprinkles, which I needed to take on the last boss here, the Dark Sun. First things first, I set up my barrier with Forest Aegis, making the damage throughout this battle be somewhat manageable. I played this fight like I did in the district battle, but just a little bit more carefully. I tried my best to keep my health and MP full, waiting for Lawnmower to give me chances to actually hit the thing. Partway into the battle, it felt like I was struggling to maintain my health. I got hit with some pretty big attacks, Xiaoping wasn't really healing me, and I barely had Lawnmower activate, having to even pass him up several times due to me being at such low health. Nightmare was doing a number on me, basic attacks didn't do much damage, but the stronger attacks did about 80 damage, and let's not forget that it can use 2 moves per turn. Eventually though, I did manage to get the Dark Sun down to a quarter of its health, but as you should know, that just sends it into its second phase. I was getting destroyed, because I already had to use a lot of my HP sprinkles earlier in this fight, so I didn't have much to work with when my health got reduced to 1. Even the meteor attack would put me into the red, barrier included. I was just not holding up well, and like before, had started using shield sprinkles after my HP sprinkles ran out. I had to use my next turn to set up my barrier again, knowing very well that a normal attack would otherwise kill me. I was running out of options, as the Meteor Swarm and 1 HP move were just inevitable, and Lawnmower was not helping. In the end, I was out of shield sprinkles too, so, after fighting for my life for 30 whole minutes, I lost. I knew that I cut it close in the district fight, but I was worried that maybe my win there was just a fluke. Regardless, I knew that I did it before, even if it was just luck, so I went back in. Again, I got defeated by the Dark Sage, so I went back in, and again, the Dark Sun took me out this time. After that, I knew that I had to up my last remaining stat, my sprinkle count. I just fought a large group of weak and easy enemies over and over again, getting hundreds of faces. I knew that I didn't necessarily need to max it out though, so instead I just went for 700 sprinkles, which I felt would be what I needed. After all that, I went to take on the Dark Sun one more time. This time, I took all the information that I have gathered throughout the fights to heart and played it as safe as I possibly could. Before coming into this fight, I realized something about Xiaoping's healing. She would heal me after certain conditions were met, being that for about 2 turns, I must be in what would be considered a low health zone. This doesn't just mean in the red, but somewhere closer to about half health, and for me in particular, it was about 170 HP. Being in low health for 2 turns is not interrupted by healing, so long as I got down to low enough health again afterwards. I actually tried to use this to my advantage a little bit by carefully letting my HP get low enough, but not so low that I could get killed. This gave me more turns to restore MP, and also, if Lawnmower activated, I could be at around full health and not have to worry, since Xiaoping would have me healed by then. I also spent more time clearing the coins with Snort so that it would use some more turns to summon new ones, and they did not harm me in any way because they could only do 1 damage at a time. When the coins were all gone, I would use Mounted Attack because it did a bit of extra damage compared to Snort. Next, what I wanted to do after all of this was make sure to land a big hit with Horse Whispering right before the Dark Sun got to its second phase, so that I didn't have to deal with it for as long, as it would be at lower health, thus requiring less attacks. But unfortunately, that didn't happen, as Lawnmower did a little bit more damage than I anticipated. But I was ready for this. I knew that after things like the Meteor Swarm and the 1 HP move, it would always follow up with one of its first stage attacks. Since I knew that it could only do about 80 damage with its strongest attack, I only healed to about 90 HP after I was put into the red, letting myself and Xiaoping do the rest to not waste any sprinkles. I also tried to keep in mind which attack would be coming next in the turn order, so that I knew I wasn't taking a big risk when Lawnmower gave me the chance to attack while I was at low health. During times like those, when it would take turns that didn't either use Meteor Swarm or the 1 HP move, I would heal to 130, since a strong attack paired with a normal one would do around 120 damage, and I didn't want to take any risk, so that's the amount that I would always heal to, even if it ended up using 2 normal attacks. Since I would have spent 2 turns in low health range because of that, Xiaoping would heal me, and I would be alright. I also wasn't being so sparing with my MP either, because I knew that I only needed 2 Horse Whisperings and a mounted attack to take out the remaining health of the boss, and I had the sprinkles to make it through. After carefully managing my sprinkles, Xiaoping's heals, and the Dark Sun's turn order for a while, Lawnmower gave me attack number 2. I barely had enough sprinkles to fill up my MP, and I was cutting it so close that I had to pull out a calculator just to check. Right as the animation for the 1 HP move started playing after this, I had the menu pulled up and queued up the sprinkles so that timing would not be an issue. I'm quite pleased that all of this boss's animations were so long, because this would have been a bit harder otherwise. Right now, I just had to survive until Lawnmower let me get in one last hit. I was down to 150 HP sprinkles, almost no MP sprinkles, and just a piece of candy as my backup. I used what MP that I had to heal, and endured one more attack. With the last bit of my energy and patience, I used mounted attack and finished off the Tower of Dread. This took far too many hours, more than I was expecting, but again, there was still one more thing. In the Switch version of Miitopia exists the final challenge, the Tower of Despair, filled with some tough enemies. I have never done this before. I don't know exactly what's in here, so I just went in without a plan. First was the Elite Goblins, which weren't all too bad actually. They did a little bit of damage when my barrier was up, but one of them did exceptional amounts, so I targeted that one first, using mounted attack since it still did more damage, but could only target the one. They also have an ability to make the Miis angry, but since I changed to the cool personality a bit ago, I was immune. After that, I took out the rest, and that floor was as easy as that. Next up was the Heavy Golem, and oh boy, was it heavy. This thing felt like it had insane amounts of health, and also did spread damage. Lucky for me though, I was just one person, so that was nothing more than a weak attack. It was just a battle of endurance, but since I could heal more than it could deal, I was fine. These 2 floors might have seemed quite easy, but trust me, they took ages to actually get through. After that was a boss that really sucked and took more time, the Neon Pharaohs. Just like the other Pharaohs, they inflicted me with the Pharaoh status, which took several of my turns at a time, and I could only attack every so often. Luckily, they weren't all too tough, and Snort could deal with all 3 of them easily, not to mention the fact that Lawnmower was pretty generous here. On the 4th floor waited the Serpent, which was, again, not too bad, but it was in fact strong. It had an attack that dealt 60 damage, which was sizable, but still not much compared to what I've dealt with up until this point. I was starting to feel like this tower wasn't as big of a deal as it was made out to be, and took out the Serpent too. Next was a bunch of burgers. They didn't even really do anything, but that's yet again because I'm all alone. So they couldn't eat any party members, since there was only one of me. This was going so smoothly until I ran into the Red Fiend. This thing was a monstrosity! A true menace! I put up a shield as soon as I saw it, but that wasn't going to stop the inevitable. In the heat of the moment, I even forgot that the Fiend's whole thing is that it has such a high magic stat, so I used my horse whispering, wasting a ton of MP. I knew this thing must have had a ton of HP too, so this just didn't seem too possible. And I was right. Eventually, I lost to its one-hit KO and fell back to the bottom of the tower. I had to find out how much health this thing had to see if there was a strategy that I could come up with. And it had 4,000 HP. That might not sound like so much compared to all the other things that I've been fighting, but think about the fact that I deal less than 700 damage with a mounted attack. Even if I got that much damage, it would take 6 attacks to kill this thing. And that means getting 6 attacks in a row with Lawnmower, which is not feasible. Not to mention the fact that I only have 5 shield sprinkles, and this thing has a 90% chance to use its one-hit KO, and it has minions that can inflict the evil status, wasting my turn. So yeah, sorry to say it, but this isn't possible. Or at least, not feasible. You gotta give me credit though, right? I beat the Tower of Dread with no party, and all of my attacks were done through the horse. That's something. It's just that the Tower of Despair's Red Fiend was a really bad matchup for this challenge. But this challenge was fun anyways, and I'm proud to say that I could at least beat what would have been the 3DS version's post-game. Before ending off though, I just want to put it out there that you can get a Lawnmower hoodie if you want, and there's no time limit, so don't worry about that. Also, if you want to see more stuff like this, maybe in games besides Miitopia, why not subscribe? With all that said and done though, thank you to everybody for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye!